Okay, let's have a look at numbers and math operations in Python 3. The first thing I should mention here is that Python defines three numerical types. They are integers, floating point numbers, and complex numbers. The complex numbers are usually used in some advanced math operations and are not of great interest for our current needs. Instead, we will work a lot with integers and floating point numbers, and that's why we will focus on these two numerical types and their corresponding operators and functions. So let's define a variable and assign it an integer and another variable associated with a floating point number, or a float in short. By the way, the float type refers to real numbers having a decimal point positioned in between the integer part and the fractional part. So let's consider the following numbers. We have num1 equals 10 and num2 equals 2.5. Let's see type of num1. So class int, which means integer, and type of num2, class float, meaning a floating point number. Now let's see what operations we are able to perform using integers and floating point numbers. Addition, 1 plus 2, for example, or num1 plus num2 if we decide to use the variables. Subtraction, 2 minus 1. Division, 5 divided by 2. Integer division, 5 divided by 2 again, this time returning only the integer part of 2.5. Multiplication, 4 times 2. Raising to a power, 4 to the power of 2. Modulo, this means finding out the remainder after the division of one number by another. So let's say 5 modulo 2 returns 1 because 5 divided by 2 equals 2 with a remainder of 1. Now it's time to have a look at the comparison operators. So we have less than for less than 5, which is true, greater than 5 greater than 4, which is again true, less than or equal to for less than or equal to 5, greater than or equal to 5 greater than or equal to 4, which is again true, equals 5 equals 5. This is the way in which you verify the equality between two values or two expressions. And not equals for not equals 5, which is again true. Now let's talk a bit about the order of evaluation for these operators inside a mathematical expression. What if we have to deal with multiple operators within the same expression? Which operations have priority over others? Well, the order is the following. Firstly, the raising to a power operation has the highest priority inside an expression. This means it will always be evaluated first. Then we have multiplication, division, and modulo with equal priorities. And lastly, we have addition and subtraction also with equal priorities. Let's see an example. Let's say 100 minus 5 to the power of 2 divided by 5 times 2. What would be the correct result here? Well, Python will first evaluate 5 to the power of 2, which returns 25. Then, since division and multiplication have the same priority, they will be evaluated from left to right. So, 25 divided by 5 equals 5, then multiplied by 2 equals 10. And finally, subtraction, having the lowest priority in this expression, will return 100 minus 10. The final result should be 90, so let's check this, and indeed this is the correct result. Now let's look at two types of conversions. Let's see how can we convert an integer to a float and vice versa. Well, Python has two functions available for these operations. Let's see them. For example, the int function, int of 1.7. The result is 1 because the int function will round down the number in between parentheses to the nearest integer, which is 1 in this case. Next we have the float function, so float of 2. The result is 2.0. The float function will add this 0.0, converting 2 from integer to a floating point number. Finally, let's have a look at a few more functions which may come in handy in the future when working with numbers. The ABS function returns the absolute value. This is actually the distance between the number we provide in between parentheses and 0. So ABS of 5 returns 5 since this is the distance between 5 and 0. Next, ABS of minus 5 also returns 5 since the distance is the same as before. Next, let's start comparing two numbers. Let's use the max function for this. So max between 1 and 2 separated by a comma returns 2 because 2 is the largest number in between parentheses. Also, we have the min function, min between 1 and 2 will return 1 because this is the smallest number in between parentheses, of course. And finally, let's see another way of raising to a power, this time using a built-in Python function instead of the double asterisk we've seen before. The function is called POW and it works like this. So POW 3, 2, where 3 is the base and 2 is the exponent or the power. The result should be 3 to the power of 2, which is 9, and indeed the result is correct. I think this should be more than enough math for now, so let's move on to booleans.